All right, we're going to go on to John 6:22. We did 6:22 to 29. What a great section that is. Now we're moving on to affirmation of the gospel, further affirmation of the gospel in John 6:30 on. Let's see how far we can get with that. There's so much. This chapter is loaded. It's a great chapter for detailed study. John chapter 6. We're at the table of contents here. Move on down to 6:30. And there's a section 6:30 to 36. They said, therefore, to him, what sign then do you do, that we may see and may believe you? What do you do? This is referring back to 6:29. Where Jesus asked, what are the works you must do to know that Jesus, they said, what shall we do that we may work the works of God in order to get eternal life? Jesus answered and said to them, this is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he sent. So now they want to know, okay, who are you? What sign? Give us a sign to say that to us that you're believable. He's already fed the 5,000 plus. What more do you want? So they say, what sign then do you do that we may see and may believe you? What do you do? Well, there's enough there already. Our fathers the manna did eat in the wilderness, according as it is having been written, bread out of the heaven he, Moses, gave them to eat. So they're questioning him. Jesus then said to them, truly, truly, I say to you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread out of heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread out of heaven, the manna. For the bread of God is that which is coming down out of the heaven and giving life to the world. So this is something that gives you eternal life, not feeds your physical hunger for the moment, and then you have to do it again the next time. Then they said to him, Lord, always give us this bread. They're halfway believing and halfway questioning. And Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. The one who comes to me shall never hunger, and the one who believes in me shall never thirst at any time. I say these things, I've interpreted this verse. Here's the Greek. Take a look at it. See, the ones who come. This is a participle phrase, the noun. The ones who come to me in a moment's time will never hunger. Comes to you in faith. And the ones who believe in me may not thirst at any time. You see? Never. So, taking a close look at the words, we conclude this. First of all, after observing Jesus' miraculous signs, hearing his testimony, and concluding that he was the prophet to come, they were going to force him to be king, and he moves to Capernaum and miraculously across the water, and they still pursue him. The crowd still wanted proof in order to believe in him. Amazing. They bargained with him to produce a greater miracle than the manna in the desert in order to believe in him unto eternal life. Jesus indicated that the manna bread was given by God through Moses, which was perishable and only sustained the physical lives of the ancient Israelites, just for a short time. But so much the more, Jesus says, he was the true bread of God from heaven, who had come down to give eternal life to all who believed. A far greater miracle whom they had seen, but in whom they did not believe. He's the testifying miracle. He's the God-man who does these temporal miracles to point to who he is. Who else could do these things but he's from God? Who else can sustain the universe but God? He's declaring all of this. So, John 6:27-28, Jesus then answered, "This is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he sent." And then they say in 6:29, "What miraculous sign then do you do, that we may see and may believe you what you do?" At 6:30. So the crowd still wanted further proof in order to believe in him that he was the prophet, the one God had sent. They told him, "Our father the manna did eat in the wilderness, according to as it has been written, bread out of the heaven he, Moses, gave them to eat." John 6:31. So they bargained with him that they would believe in him if he produced a greater miracle than the manna which was provided by God through Moses daily to feed millions of ancient Israelites as they wandered in the desert. Notice by the phrase "that we may see it and believe" corroborates that the crowd understood that Jesus was saying that to have eternal life, all one had to do was to believe in him as the one God had sent to save them. So they got the message. They just didn't want to believe it. They just did not believe in his capacity to provide eternal life. Note that the phrase "our forefathers," which refers to ancient Israel, points to the crowd being predominantly Jewish. So Jesus then said to them, "Truly, truly, I say to you, it is not Moses who has given you the bread out of heaven, but it is my Father who gives you the true bread out of heaven." He implied by this that the manna from Moses was given to their fathers, the ancient Israelites, by God, administered by Moses, but then it miraculously appeared without Moses' help. Furthermore, the manna bread was perishable and only sustained the physical lives of the ancient Israelites, which perished and needed to be received every day. But Jesus indicated that so much the more it was not Moses but his Father who had given them and the world his Son, the true bread out of heaven, which never perished, but provided eternal life to all those who expressed a one-time moment of faith alone in Jesus Christ alone, who endured in them to eternal life. After all this, the crowd still did not comprehend, but they told Jesus, "Lord, always give us this bread," as if they needed a constant supply of physical food to ingest to keep on having eternal life. He made it clear, but they don't want it clear. They don't want to actually believe, trust, step out with a moment of faith. Although they addressed him as the Lord, they still did not believe in him. Nevertheless, Jesus persisted, as we should persist with people, as long as that window of opportunity to share our faith about the gospel is available. So Jesus persisted with the crowd despite their obtuseness to the unbelief. He declared, "I am the bread of life, the bread of eternal life. The one who comes to me shall never hunger, and the one who believes in me shall never thirst at any time." Never in the Greek, ume, is a double negative, signifying an emphatic absolutely never. Once one expressed a belief in Jesus, one would absolutely never be hungry or thirsty for eternal spiritual matters. This does not refer to a temporal condition of physical hunger or thirst, but to an absolute condition of eternal life, never to be lost. In John 6:35, the phrase, "He who comes to me will never be hungry," parallels the next phrase, "He who believes in me will never be thirsty." Both meanings, he who believes in Jesus, the bread of life from eternal life, will have eternal life, a state in which one indeed will never be hungry or thirsty. The word rendered "but" in John 6:36 is in opposition to Jesus' testimony and demonstration to them by a miraculous sign, which is followed by a statement of the crowd's lack of acceptance of him. They had seen and heard him, and still they did not believe in him to provide eternal life. The verb rendered "have seen" in the YLT is in the perfect tense, a completed action with ongoing results, which conveys the idea that the crowd had an ongoing knowledge of Jesus through their continual observation of him, with the result that they continued not to believe in him. The context portrays a deliberate, willful refusal to believe, for which each individual will be held accountable. And you can look at John 3:36 for that. Jesus claims to have come from heaven, where only angels and God reside, and to be the provider of eternal life to the world through a moment of faith alone in him alone, a power reserved for God alone. This surpasses the miraculous sign of the manna from Moses. It is interesting to note that Jesus' claims to deity and godly powers were not questioned by the crowd at this time, although they constituted outright blasphemy if Jesus were not God. But to be halfway there between unbelief and belief is to be nowhere. Then, no man has yet been in heaven when Jesus referred to himself as the true bread of God from heaven, the bread of eternal life. This is a reference to his eternal and heavenly existence as the Son of God, as deity. This is corroborated by his calling God his Father, implying an intimate and eternal relationship with God as the Son of God. Now, this is covered already in John chapter 3. At the time of Jesus' conversation with Nicodemus, in John chapter 3, no one had ascended to heaven but the Son of Man, Jesus himself, who came down from heaven, who yet was in heaven, a reference to his eternal omnipresence in heaven and on earth, an attribute of God alone. You can read that at your leisure. It's a review of John chapter 3. Notice how this interweaves the doctrines are brought forward from past chapters and past passages, just to keep the believer, the reader, in mind with the doctrines as they are so related. They don't contradict one another. That's why the Bible is so reliable. There's no doctrine there that's presented as true that contradicts any other doctrine. They all fit together like a glove. Most other religious books contradict themselves on what they say is a one belief, and they turn around and negate that and add another. So we'll move on to the next section in John chapter 6. John 6, 37 to 40. This is an interesting thing. Now, we've got the gospel presented a number of times, symbolically, figuratively, and directly. I have the bread of life. You believe in me, you have eternal life. They got the figurative understanding of eternal bread, and believe in me, the literal one, or believe in him, and he'll provide it for you. So now, John 6:37, all that the Father gives me will come to me, and whoever comes to me, I will never drive away. Eternal security. Come to you in faith. The Father is sovereign. He will give to Jesus, the Son of God, those whom will choose to believe of their own volition in him. And Jesus then says, for I have come down from heaven, not to do my will, but to do the will of him who sent me. A declaration that he is God. And it literally says, the one having sent me. And this is the will of the Father who sent me, that all that he has given to me, I may not lose of it, but may raise it up in the last day. All those who will choose to believe in him will not be lost. They have eternal security, and they'll be raised up to resurrection the last day, and the final part of their salvation fulfilled in the resurrection body, just like the Lord's, when he raises up from the dead. So, God the Father gave to his Son, Jesus Christ, as a gift all individuals who will ever choose to come to Jesus in the sense of believing in him for eternal life. And all who come by faith to him, he will never cast out in the sense of never denying them eternal life, regardless of their behavior. Eternal security, no matter what. So the phrase rendered comes to me in John 6:37 continues the figure of speech for a moment of faith alone in Jesus Christ alone, resulting in eternal life, which was established in verse 35. By this, Jesus continues his train of thought on who will secure eternal life by stipulating, all that the Father gives me will come to me in John 6:37, implying God's sovereign choosing of certain individuals who will then choose to come to faith in Jesus Christ unto eternal life, volitionally. We'll continue with this next time.